Well, hello and welcome to the Movie Burner Blog Rundown, the new weekly show from Movie Burner Entertainment, where we discuss the latest movie reviews on our website at movieburnerentertainment.org. What is up first, John?
First this week, Stephen, we have got Deliver Us from Evil. It's from 2014. This has been reviewed by our writer John Gray, and it's directed by Scott Derrickson. The screenplay is by Scott Derrickson as well as Paul Harris Boardman. It stars Eric Bana, Edgar Ramirez and Olivia Munn. There's also an appearance from Sean Harrison there as well, a chap I'm a big fan of. I've not seen this film, Stephen. I can't come in with any great insight, but I will discuss a couple of his previous films that he directed in Doctor Strange and The Exorcism of Emily Rose. But I'll let you in and see if you've got any thoughts on this, because I haven't.
Listen, John, I've not seen this either, but I do know that when I saw this review coming through, I did recognise the name Scott Derrickson right away. Obviously from Doctor Strange. I've said this. I think I say this every week. It's my favourite Marvel film to date. That along with Ant-Man. I didn't know that he did direct The Exorcism of Emily Rose. I saw that. I don't know, maybe a year or two ago. Wasn't a massive fan of it, I've got to be honest. I've not seen this one, but I have read the review.
Yeah, The Exorcism of Emily Rose was just a terrible horror film. I'm not going to go into it in any great detail because it wasn't very good, and it's not Deliver Us from Evil, so I'm making totally off track. But yeah, you're right about Doctor Strange, Stephen. That was a fantastic MCU addition to the MCU. Also starring Benedict Cumberbatch, one of my favourite MCU standalone films as well. It was fantastic, everything about it was great. The story, it was different. It focused on a guy that was very obnoxious, very arrogant, and just followed his journey into a superhero and becoming a more balanced individual. I've not seen any of these other films. I see Sinister's another one. I did like what John said in his review, where he says that this is a guy that's a devout Catholic or a devout Christian, and he's really continually delving into the horror genre, and he ponders why he does this, and he goes through his review and he explains why indeed he does continually go back to the horror genre. It was a fantastic review. I thoroughly enjoyed reading it, and again, just the cast is amazing, man. I mean, I would watch this just based on the cast alone. Eric Bana, fantastic actor. He made me go and watch that horrendous King Arthur film, and he really did make it bearable, even though he was in it for very small periods of time. Edgar Ramirez, Olivia Munn, and as I said, Sean Harris is just he always plays these twitchy little guys in these films. He was obviously in Harry Brown, Ashes to Ashes, couple of films. He's always this twitchy oddity of a man. I don't know what he's like in this, where it's much the same vein. But yeah, I've not seen this film, but I'd probably give it a viewing just because of this review. He's really won me over.
Yeah, I think John does mention in his review whether or not you believe in supernatural or not. This movie asks interesting questions about the nature of evil and the nature of humankind in general. He goes on to say what makes this movie nuanced is that it doesn't say the devil makes people do bad things while God makes them do good things. People are still responsible for their actions. In another beautifully played scene, Saatchi confesses to Mendoza that he lost control while chasing down a child molester. The choice was his, he screwed up. Rather than judgment, Mendoza stresses that Saatchi had a choice to make about who he wants to be in the here and now. That's what works about this movie. Whether you're religious, agnostic or just a horror fan, you'll get something out of it. And I think that's a good summarisation of I don't really want to read word for word of the review. Go on the website and do that. Yeah. But that kind of does sum up the review and the movie in general.
Yeah, the other thing that I thoroughly enjoyed about his review is that he does say that it's one of those horror films that's more psychological based. It utilises nice special effects and just the psychological elements of the character instead of the traditional jump scares. It's much like Hereditary that I just went to see last week, and it's quite intelligent the way it handles the scares, so that's another positive for this film. But we are going to move on, Stephen, to the very next film, and it's Dave Anderson's review of Blockers from this year, directed by Kay Cannon and starring Leslie Mann, John Cena and Ike Barinholtz. I've seen this film too. I believe I did a review on it maybe about a month back. But kind of a share similar viewpoints on it. I think he perhaps didn't get as much out of it as I did in terms of laughs. He does say in his review that he laughed out loud at some moments. I did as well. Maybe a few more moments, but I do agree with some of the things he says about decisions with the story. They could have done things a little bit better. They did rely on some of the ridiculousness of the antics the parents got up to at times in the film, instead of really focusing on the children more.
Yeah, John, I remember you did this review and we did speak about it, and I did say at the time I wouldn't be rushing out to go and see this type of film. It's not my type of film. I'm not a prude in any means, but it's just not my type of film. I think it's one of those Marmite type humour film. You either love it or you hate it. Didn't know that Gary Cole and Gina Gershon was in there as well.
Yeah.
Gary Cole, you know, he's a legend in my book. Very funny man. I don't know what kind of role he plays in this, but I'm sure it's very memorable.
Yeah, it certainly is very memorable. They play a pair of sexually adventurous parents in the film. Some of the antics are very, very funny indeed. There was one involving John Cena getting inadvertently involved in a blindfolded darkness sort of a game, which was absolutely hilarious for me. The other moments that I did enjoy, and I agree with you says, some of the humour was laugh out loud, as I said previously. There was one moment in particular for me, and it was involving Leslie Mann's character, where she gets an electric shock off of the TV while she's hiding behind a telly in her daughter's hotel room. That was just hilarious, the way she touched it to get the shock and collapsed. That perfectly exemplifies the comedy you're getting in this film. It's ridiculous at times, but very, very well implemented. But as I say, Stephen, we do share many sentiment with this film. It was quite funny in parts, very funny in some parts, but it could have been implemented better, the story. And I can totally understand why you didn't find it your thing. This is very, very divisive, this film. It's a Marmite film, as I've said many a time. You either love these things or you hate them. It's very much in the vein of an American Pie and films along those lines. And it's quite immature, some of the humour, and it will put people off.
Yeah, John, and just moving on to our next movie review. This was by Chauncey Tallis, and this film is 30 years old now. I remember when it came out. It's Robert Zemeckis' Who Framed Roger Rabbit, starring Bob Hoskins, Christopher Lloyd and Joanna Cassidy. Also the voice of Charles Fleischer is in there as well. For anyone that doesn't know who he is, he played a small role in Back to the Future 2 as the chap that was trying to save the clock tower in the future, talking to Marty about the Cubs winning the World Series. It's a great film. I remember at the time being blown away by the animation and the live action being put together in the one shot. I didn't see a lot of this growing up, and I just thought for its time it was very ahead of its time. Christopher Lloyd as well, you know, a bit of a reunion there with Robert Zemeckis, as I said, from the Back to the Future films. He plays the villain, a very convincing villain as well, you know, pardon the pun, but very cartoon-like villain, but nevertheless very menacing. Bob Hoskins, you know, he's one of Britain's national treasures, who sadly no longer with us, and he played Eddie Valiant in this film. Also the iconic cartoon character of Jessica Rabbit is in there as well. Very recognisable if you ever see that character in like any kind of merchandise and t-shirts or whatever. Yeah. But just a great film overall. Baby Herman as well, played by Lou Hirsch. That was one of the more prominent roles in there. I think it was the first time I ever seen Looney Tune characters mixed in with some Disney characters. If my memory serves me correct, I don't know how they managed to pull that one off with the sort of rights and stuff like that, but I loved it at the time. It's a film I've not seen in such a long time. That's how I'm a bit hazy in describing this film, because when it did come out I was only 12. I loved it as a kid, and I think I still would like to go back and see this at some point.
Yeah, I can't really add much more to what you said, Stephen, because sadly I don't think I've ever seen this film. Maybe I did when I was a young child and I don't recall it. But as you say, there is some visually iconic characters in this film. As you say, Jessica Rabbit, Dolores, the character of Dolores, and just looking at the photos, the way it did mingle and intermix live action work with cartoon work. We've seen this done in many a film after this. Certainly Space Jam is the one that springs to mind right away for me. That's one of my favourite films growing up. And this is probably a real pioneering moment for that sort of a technology, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was used sparingly in the likes of Mary Poppins for some brief scenes, and the same with Pete's Dragon and stuff like that. But this was the one that I can remember first seeing and being just amazed. Just looking at that picture there, John, of Roger Rabbit hugging Eddie Valiant. Yeah, just for its time, it was just phenomenal, you know. And Christopher Lloyd with those mad eyes as well, really freaks me out. I remember that sort of. I don't want to, you know, spoil the film for anyone that's not seen a 30-year-old film, but his death scene was really scary, you know, for a 12-year-old.
I wouldn't know, Steve, because I definitely haven't seen it, but I probably would go onto YouTube and give it a bash, because just looking at the photo of Christopher Lloyd, he looks absolutely deranged with those eyes. Look at those stick-on eyes you can get, and you see people popping up in various different objects for hilarity. And yeah, just because he's in it, I probably would give it a watch, because I'm such a big fan of Christopher Lloyd. And just because it is such a pioneering film, I would imagine with this mixture of cartoon and live action, yeah, I certainly will give this a watch at some point. Fantastic review from John C. Incidentally, I thought it was a thoroughly enjoyable read from start to finish. And if you've not read it, get onto the website and give it a read because it's deserving of it.
Yeah, Jordan, just moving on now. This is one that I wrote, Justice League Crisis on Two Earths from 2010. This film was directed by Sam Liu and Lauren Montgomery. It stars William Baldwin, Mark Hamill, Chris Noth, Gina Torres, James Woods, Jonathan Adams, Brian Bloom, Bruce Davidson, Josh Keaton and Vanessa Marshall. As you'd expect from a Justice League film, it's got a big cast as well.
Yeah.
Some unknowns, some knowns in there. Ones that stand out for me: William Baldwin, Mark Harmon, Chris Noth and James Woods. I was a big fan of James Woods in the mid-80s. Did some terrific films. He's a bit of a political sort of figure at the moment on Twitter. I think he's a big Republican at the moment. Didn't used to be, as I recall, but he certainly is now. He plays Owlman. Sounds like a really crap character, and when you see his costume, it looks really silly. But it was a great character. I've got to be honest. Just going back to Superman, Batman, Public Enemies, where we saw Lex Luthor as the president, and this one he's a good guy. It's a bit strange, but what happens is there's a parallel universe that Lex Luthor's the good guy, and the Justice League, who are called the Crime Syndicate in his universe, are the villains, and he crosses over to our universe, or the DC universe I should say, and asks for the Justice League's help in conquering this evil sort of syndicate. It's a decent film. I did enjoy it. I thought the animation was great, and as much as I always associate the animated Batman character with Kevin Conroy, I thought William Baldwin did a terrific Dark Knight. Also, Bruce Greenwood as well. He did Gotham by Gaslight. But I think Baldwin does a great job here. Mark Harmon also surprised me playing Superman. Clancy Brown did the job of Lex Luthor in Public Enemies. Here it was Chris Noth. He does a great job here. He plays Mr. Big in the television series Sex and the City. But it's a great cast, it's a good story, and anyone that fancies watching just a random DC animated film, I would say try this one out.
Yeah, much like I've said before, Stephen, I'm going to start watching these DC animated universe films because currently the DCEU is a bit of a disaster, as we all know. They're just not mingling and bringing this all together organically and in a way that's transferring over to audiences and box office success, out with, of course, Wonder Woman, which was a complete anomaly in that regard. But I've not seen this film, but I love reading your reviews of these various different animated films, Stephen, looking at the stories. They're all wacky stories. Because as you said, Stephen, last week you did a review of Public Enemies and Lex Luthor was playing the role of the American president. This week he's playing the role of the good guy in a parallel universe. Just shows you the way that comic book stories can be really self-contained, but at the same time can interconnect into wider universes. You can have stories where they go off into parallel universes. You can have side stories where you've got Lex Luthor as a president, and then the next moment he's trying to destroy the whole world. Just looking at the cast, as you said, I can't really add much more. Incredible cast. That's one thing I'm always taken aback with these DC animated films. Just the array of talent they can get in to do the voice acting. Mark Hamill, James Woods is one of those guys you just know his face right away from 90s films. William Baldwin and Chris Noth, the guy with the incredible eyebrows is what I refer to him as. Those eyebrows are very distinctive. But the one that did step out while you were talking about the film there, I did dive into Bruce Davison, Stephen, and I see he was in a couple of good films, I have to say, but one of them is surely not Titanic 2. What the hell is that about? He's in a film called Titanic 2. How can you have a Titanic 2 film? I'm getting sidetracked here. I do remember him as the guy that melted away, I believe, in X-Men. But yeah, I mean, it looks very intriguing. It does look intriguing, this story. And I would probably go and batter through these just after you, Stephen, probably doing them in the same order that you're doing them, because I want to get filled in with all these various different comic book stories that we were just talking about at the weekend, that DC and Warner Brothers really are pillaging to bring into the live-action expanded universe, because you said yourself, the Wonder Woman animated film, it's pretty much a take-for-take remake, the live-action version, so just being armed with the knowledge and then seeing maybe the directions they'll choose to go in future with the live-action stuff would be very interesting. I'm not a big comic book fan, so this would be my ticket into knowing what's happening with all these various different stories.
Yeah, John, this was over a barbecue. We were talking about this, and we were talking about this one too. We're just about to talk about Batman Under the Red Hood from 2010. This has got to be my favourite one to date. This opens very graphically with the Joker, who's played by a chap called John DiMaggio. I'm not very familiar with the actor, but he plays this creepy, disturbing, and terrifying. I'm not going to say version of the Joker, because that's what the Joker is, but he's so vicious towards the character of Jason Todd, who is the second Robin, and beats him to within probably about an inch of his life, and then blows up the warehouse that he's in. The Dark Knight doesn't manage to save him. I don't really want to get too much into the storyline of it, because I think you really do have to watch this one to really enjoy it and take it in. It's a very dark film for an animated film, and very graphic. And Bruce Greenwood, as I was just talking about before, who was in Gotham by Gaslight, he returns as Batman again. You've also got Neil Patrick Harris. He appeared in a previous animated film as Barry Allen, The Flash. Here he plays Nightwing. He's got one of those youthfulness voices about him that he can pull off those sort of younger characters, the likes of Robin and Barry Allen, etc. And here he does a sterling job. You get Jason Isaacs, Ra's al Ghul in there too, and Wade Williams' Black Mask. These are used very sparingly in this movie, but serve the plot justice. And you've got this character as well that I wasn't familiar with as well, the Red Hood. He's almost like Punisher, Marvel's Punisher, where he's a kind of anti-hero. At first, when you're introduced to him, you do think he is the sort of standout villain in this film. You get to know him, you realise he's trying to do the same job as Batman. The difference is Batman doesn't cross a line. He's got a code of ethics, and this is where the Red Hood excels, because he finishes the job, if you like. As I said, I don't really want to get too much into what happens in the film. I think it's one that you have to sit down and embrace. It is really good, and I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah. Again, just reading the review, Stephen, it's got me very, very intrigued. I love the complexity of all the stories they weave together in these animated films, and just what he says about the Red Hood character being in a similar vein to the Punisher. That's got me intrigued. I do love these sort of anti-heroes. I was discussing it with Deadpool 2 on the box office chat show, Stephen, where Josh Brolin comes in and he's playing a villain, but he's not a villain, because you do understand the motivations behind the character, why he's doing what he's doing, and he is a bit of an anti-hero, as you said. And just the fact that you have got Dick Grayson, aka Nightwing, in there as well. This is a character I've always been very, very intrigued by. I mentioned that as well when we were talking about that in the main podcast. Even we're discussing Batman in the DCEU, and I believe it was Joseph Gordon-Levitt was playing that character. It was rumoured he was Nightwing, and he'd maybe take over for Christian Bale's character in an expanded version of Christopher Nolan's universe. It's a character I'm intrigued by. I do recall playing, I think it might have been the Gotham Knight series, and I think there was I think Nightwing came in one moment. I can't remember what game it was, but he was in a game, Nightwing. Very, very interesting character. He's got the sticks, he just kicks the shit out of people. He's kind of an anti-hero himself. Just again, the cast, Jason Isaacs in there as Ra's al Ghul. I don't know how prominent he was in the film, but you've got the Riddler, Dick Grayson, Joker. What more do you want? You've got an array of great villains and an array of iconic characters. The story seems very intriguing, and he says the score was almost Zimmer-esque, so yeah, I'm on for this one. I'm going to start watching these. My question would be, Stephen, should I start with the Red Hood, or should I follow the path you've been going with, just chronologically start to finish? And do you think that the DCEU should be taking a leaf out of the animated films books, as we did discuss at the weekend? Do you think they should be getting into these stories more and reimagining them for the live action side of things, or do you think they should continue on going the way they're going?
Well, firstly, John, I don't think it really matters what order you watch these in. None of them are interconnected in any way. I'm just watching them in chronological order. It's really depending finding copies of these films that are over 10, 12 years old now. Thank the Lord for eBay. But it's just one of these experiences that I want to go through them all, because like you, I don't have a lot of comic book background. Certainly here in the UK, where comic book shops are very rare, if you like. I think we may have maybe a handful in Glasgow just alone, and they've only come out really here over the last 20 years. Certainly when I was growing up, comics were very hard to come by. Not so much in the US, but certainly here in Scotland it was very tough to really get your hands on these physical copies of comics. The other thing was I was kind of introduced to comic book characters through a cartoon show called Glenn Michael's Cartoon Cavalcade, which was all these sort of random unknown comics that were animated. Pretty sure that Mark Millar of Kick-Ass fame, this was his introduction to comic book characters as well. I think Glenn Michaels was a hero of his for introducing, and we see the path that chap's took ever since. Your other question in regards to should they take a leaf out of the animated films for the live action films? I don't know. I don't know if DC have deliberately kept both separate, because I think these animated films have got a bit of success on their own. I don't know if it would damage them by cherry picking the best bits. It certainly did with Wonder Woman anyway, but they've got so much material there to work from. I would love to see a Batman Under the Red Hood live action film, I've got to be honest. I think the characters in this film would do well on the big screen. I don't know if they're well known enough. I don't know if the Red Hood is well known enough. It may be amongst comic book fanatics out there, certainly. The Joker's barely in this film. When he is in it, he does make his mark, but that's just a personal choice of mine. I'd like to see that type of film being made as a live action. The ones like Justice League Crisis on Two Earths, films like that I think are suited to animated. I don't think that would work well on live action. It'd be a bit corny, a bit cheesy, but still enjoyable as an animated film. But I think what they're doing just now, I think the best thing they could do is maybe cherry pick the best bits, I suppose, but I don't know if that would affect their whole animated DC collection. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with what you're saying, Stephen. Some of the stories are a little bit far-fetched, and it would be jarring to audience members that are not as well versed in the comic book stories. But what I've always loved about DC is that they do great standalone films, self-contained stories. I never wanted to see DC kind of jumping on the bandwagon and doing an expanded universe. They were always great doing self-contained stories like The Dark Knight and even the early 90s Batman films. And I share much of your sentiment, Stephen, about the comic books, this being your introduction through animated series. I mind watching the DC animated series, the Superman and Batman animated series in the mid-90s when I was a child, and that was my introduction. You just couldn't get comic books when I was younger. I didn't know anywhere it done them. I know we've got Forbidden Planet over here, which does them now, and A1 Comics, but it's just so daunting with the whole array of stories. You've got 15, 60 years of stories to really delve into, and you don't know where to begin. So I think this is my into the whole thing, getting into these animated films, and I definitely will give this a bash. But we're going to move on to the last film in this week's Movie Burner blog rundown show, Stephen, and it's one that you've done as well. You've been a busy boy this week. You're putting everyone to shame. I think I need to start doing reviews, Stephen. I will get that Hereditary review done for next week's show. But I digress. This film is My Cousin Vinny, an absolute classic from 1992, and it's directed by Jonathan Lynn, written by Dale Lawner, and it's of course stars Joe Pesci, Marisa Tomei, Ralph Macchio, of course, of Karate Kid fame, and Mitchell Whitfield. This is a fantastic film, Stephen. Also, it's about a chap that gets accused of shooting someone, I believe, at a petrol station or something, at a gas station. And then also Joe Pesci comes in as a lawyer to try and save him. We've got that stuttering Stanley lawyer as well. There's so many epic moments. I think the judges from The Munsters, it's a fantastic film.
Yeah, Fred Gwynne's in there. This was sadly his last feature film, but what a way to get out as the judge in this movie. His interactions, John, with Joe Pesci are something to be seen if you've not seen this film. This is my introduction to Marisa Tomei as well, who's went on to do great things. She actually won an Oscar for her performance in this film. That's not a surprise. The way I said that, it sounded as if...
Yeah, it was actually controversial, that one, Stephen. A lot of people did say back in the day that they opened up the wrong card or something, and that she didn't win the Oscar, that they'd made a mess up of it. I don't believe that. I thought she was fantastic. Probably the best performance in this film. Her back and forth with Joe Pesci's character is just memorable. It's one of the best chemistries I've seen on screen. Amazing humour, amazing realistic portrayal of a relationship. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, the standout moment between those two is when Vinny wants to go out hunting and he's asking her opinion on what he's wearing, and I think she must be vegan or something, but she takes offence to, you know, shooting deer, and it's just such an iconic scene, and the line and Tommy's delivery in the lines as well is so funny, and Joe Pesci's facial reactions to her as well are just he's just such a great actor. You know, when you look at the films that this guy's been in, Raging Bull, Goodfellas, A Bronx Tale, Casino, and my first introduction to him, you know, playing sort of comedic roles was in Lethal Weapon 2, and then in Home Alone. In Home Alone he was more of a cartoon, sort of cardboard cutout sort of villain, but in this film he just shines, you know. And Ralph Macchio, as you said, you know, he's in there too, but he's barely in it. He's playing the cousin, along with his friend who are accused of this hold up. And the one thing that's kind of stood out to me about this film was it's about the cultural differences from where they're from. They're like New York guys, and they're coming down to Alabama, and their beliefs and the way their justice system works, etc. And you know, borderlines that have been offensive, you know, to the people of Alabama, because they're portrayed as very slow and, you know, not quick thinking people who like grits apparently. But listen, this film, my gran introduced this to me. I think I was maybe about 18 at the time, and she described the film as a film set in an Alabama courtroom, and it didn't sound appealing to me, I've got to be honest with you. Austin Pendleton in this film, he plays the original lawyer to one of the boys who doesn't want to touch Vinny as his attorney, and this scene had all the cast cracking up. If you look very carefully, you'll see some of them putting their heads down to look away so they're not caught on camera laughing. Pendleton just shines as a nervous, sweating, stuttering wreck, and it's one of my most favourite scenes in any comedy film.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of my favourite moments, Stephen, would probably involve Austin Pendleton. I think you said that he was actually a nervous wreck on the set himself. It wasn't actually acted. Some of that was actually real, his nerves. Of course, the ladies and gentlemen of the jury moment was amazing. As you just said before we came on and we were talking about this, where the reading glasses bit where he thinks he's got the witness on the box stumped, and the guy says, yeah, they're my reading glasses, and they're just a look of pure devastation in his eyes. It's just amazing that I'm getting better. But and just the fact that the chap, I can't remember his name, is using him as his lawyer, quickly ditches him for Vinny. That was amazing. Vinny as well, coming in with he doesn't have a suit, and he comes in with the magician's long-tailed jacket. That was a crazy and epic moment. And the back and forth with him and the judge, as you says, it's a clear clash in cultural styles. You've got the northern, more democratic style culture mixing with the more Republican southern style, and the two young youths is a classic moment with that, where they can't understand. The judge just cannot understand Joe Pesci's character throughout. He's speaking quick, and he's speaking in that New Yorker slang, and it's just it's a fantastic film, and it's absolutely hilarious at moments, but it does have a great ending as well, where he gets him off, and I thoroughly enjoyed it from start to finish. It's one of my favourite films from the 1990s, certainly one of my favourite Joe Pesci films. Thoroughly share your sentiments on him as a whole, Stephen. I think he's just a fantastic actor. And just the array of roles he has played, he goes from the psychotic roles to the utterly hilarious roles. And I can't add much more. It's 30. I can't believe it's almost 30 years old now. It's nearly the same age as me. And it has got that rewatchability to it. I can go back and watch this again and again and again, and it doesn't tire. But that is us just reached the end of this week's edition of the Movie Burner Blog Rundown, where we break down all the previous reviews and for last week on the Movie Burner Blog. We'd just like to thank you for listening to us, gibbering on and giving our views on these films and reviews, and we'll be back again next week.
Remember guys, if you're enjoying the content we're putting out, then subscribe to our channel, like, comment and share our videos. You can also find us on iTunes and Google Play at the Movie Burner Podcast, and give us a little follow on Facebook and Twitter at Movie Burners. If you fancy a spot of casual reading, then all our latest written reviews and occasional articles can be found at movieburnerentertainment.org. Until the next time, goodbye.